Hey everybody, welcome back to another Film of the Week. Hope you guys been enjoying the content on the channel as of late. And as I said when I did my review for Rise of the Planet of the Apes, I was going to be reviewing the other two films uh, as we move forward towards the new release in the series, that being Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which I will be checking out the weekend after the weekend is done. I usually watch films on Tuesdays because those are the cheap days. So, um, but we will be marching forward with this series of reviews, and we're entering now the second of the trilogy, that being Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, which was directed by Matt Reeves, taking over directing duties from Rupert Wyatt, who directed the first of these films. Initially was going to come back to direct the film. I forget why he stepped away. I think probably due to scheduling conflicts, aka just probably creative differences. I don't know. But Matt Reeves steps up to take on directing duties, a guy behind Cloverfield, and then after this, he would be involved in the Planet of the Apes series quite a bit, and then take on the Batman actually a few years later. So, um, this is set a few years later after Rise. The simian flu has now ravaged Earth. Pretty much a large chunk of that of humanity has been deceased, while some remain, that being Jason Clarke, Gary Oldman, as well as other people, Kerry Russell, um, and they are needing resources to maintain survival. So they need to get resources up and running, specifically some electricity and other things. And there's a dam that may, in fact, help with some of their problems. But the dilemma is that the dam that they are looking for is in the apes territory, where Caesar, once again played by Andy Serkis, is taking has taken leadership amongst his apes. And uh, when they uh, when they reconnect, because the apes presume for many years now that the human race is now extinguished, so now that they're just basically just frolicking and doing what as they please. Well, when they encounter the humans in quite an extreme way, um, it brings up conflict on both parties, that within the human side and also on the ape side, specifically that of an ape named Koba, played by Toby Kebbell, as there's frictions that start to form between each other and with each species. And ultimately what the film is about is basically that, is about agendas and about conflict of interest, and what that ultimately means in the grand scheme of things, and what how those agendas can really represent a person fully, or perhaps devolve that person, turn them into something far worse. Um, which is something that War for the Planet of the Apes would actually expand upon in some manner, in a much more specific way, but it would expand upon this idea a little bit more further, a little more, like I said, a little more, um, uh, say more philosophically, I guess you could say. Um, but with this, it has a lot more to do with just, I wouldn't say political, but it has that sort of manner of a political thriller, or sort of a political undertone within the dilemmas, the agendas at play with Caesar, with Koba, and on the human side of things with Jason Clarke and Gary Oldman. It has that sort of that smell, I guess, when it comes to just the dissections of these ideas. It's not in how we will see in the next film, where it's more of a philosophical manner. It feels more or less like a political manner when it comes to the representation of these perspectives. Um, and what Dawn does, I think, really well is that, firstly, I think that it's a reinvention again of the series in general, because while Rise was the foundation of everything, it definitely is the starting point. It's a completely different film, tonally speaking, than that of Rise. Rise had a little bit more of a sense of levity, and a little bit, a little bit different variation of tone and presentation of character. This has more of a more of a darker tone to it, more of a sense of tension embedded throughout, and more grit, and that would again be expanded upon further when we get to the next film. But it feels very much so like a reinvention of what of just when you enter into going from Rise to Dawn, you can tell the difference between who is directing what. And I think that I welcome more of what Dawn brought than what Rise brought. Like I said, Rise, decent foundation, but what Dawn brings, I think, is something much more interesting on a thematic level. And aesthetically, also, it is a step up. I mean, what again, like I've said in all these reviews, is that Caesar, I've incidentally I've already reviewed War for the Planet of the Apes, so I already have that review in the can. So just in case, I'm just saying, just personally for me with these reviews, like the what is it? The thing that binds them all together in my overall opinions of these films is that Caesar as a character and as a piece of just visual, like just piece of VFX, it is quite astounding. And the progression of the VFX, it gets even better in the third film. It's more refined here, and the utilization of the VFX. If you watch behind the scenes, they go into more territory. They're able to go out in the forest. They're able to take the motion capture technology with them on set, so it's not like they have to be based anywhere. They can move around much more. It was quite, in many respects, kind of revolutionary in how it moves forward the art of motion capture, and it's done really, really well. It doesn't feel janky or feels out of place. There's some scenes that do, in terms of the lighting of certain characters, it can um, uh, it doesn't mesh completely well. It is a little bit noticeable that certain things aren't blending too well, but generally speaking, with the details on the characters, specifically with that Caesar and with Koba, I think they just exude of just personality and expression and just have very, very distinct characteristics by just the look of the characters. And a lot of that has to come down from Weta Digital and what they're doing. And for another, I think the performances are really great. I think Andy Serkis, once again, is just brilliant in this role. I think he is excellent. I really thought Koba was a very interesting presence. I liked his demeanor, and again, similar to kind of how I felt about Civil War, the Marvel film that we talked about. I like that the perspectives all have a place to exist. It's not that where the film makes a choice in that, okay, well, this is the right choice and everybody else's choices are wrong or their viewpoints are wrong. It's a film that lets all these viewpoints play, and you yourself kind of insert yourself into these perspectives and ask yourself, where do I fall in this? And generally there is a build. You do see initially just a to some extent a gray area where you can understand the human point of view and you can see the ape's point of view, and there is a conflict that boils, and you see the apes have their um, have their flaws as much as humanity does, and it builds and it builds and it builds, and there is a conclusion. you know there is a rooting party, there is a party that you are rooting for, um, but that sense of gray is felt throughout, and the film does not at all really make a choice. It's just a natural progression of these perspectives, that in that building of these perspectives. It's not that the film just goes, okay, we don't care about that anymore. It's just, we're just going to let these things boil and boil and let them form into whatever they're going to be, and have that be representative of the characters. And you see how, as I said earlier, how some of these perspectives devolve the characters and how it evolves some of the characters. And not to where it is not interesting. It actually makes it very, very interesting and very informative and very fascinating. Um, so, so I really, really liked Dawn. I think that it's very, very fascinating. I think though, what you'll when we get to War, you'll see that one thing that I have always found to take issue with outside of what War does is that, as fascinating as the apes are, I mean, the apes just in this, like, just again, just the culture that they build around the characters, around the ape characters, and that of Caesar, just who he is on his own. they're really, really strong. So um, it's kind of what's the word I'm looking for? It's kind of deflating when you then are going to the human side of things with Gary Oldman and Jason Clarke. It's just not as interesting. Performance-wise, they're fine. They're doing good work, but it's not as fascinating when you are just with them. When you're with the apes, it's just a different level, and it's just so much more fascinating. And the perspective of that you carry in Dawn is that of the humans, because ultimately that is the point of view of which you are watching the story. It's not where you're viewing it from Caesar's point of view or this and that. You're given a collection of perspectives, but our entryway in is that of the humans. So, um, and war will change that. You'll see when we get to war that that definitely changes, and I think for the better. Um, but as it stands, it is a complete improvement over Rise. And Rise was not bad. You know, it was a good film, good place to start. But as I said, it is a reinvention of Rise. You know, because when you go to Rise, it has a different flavor, a different sort of a different sort of um, a different sort of just manner than compared to Dawn. And I think that Dawn just has more going on, not just thematically, but aesthetically, just again, a huge improvement. And more ideas, more conflict, more perspective. It has a interest more in its themes than I think that Rise did. Where Rise, I felt, was more or less, to some extent, some visual techniques being experimented with an idea that at play with a character that you are interested in. More or less, again, I think to do with just the performance that Andy Serkis is putting on. It's not just that with this. There is care about the themes, the care about the story, the care about the circumstance. It has real drama. It has real conflict, and you're just really, really fascinated in the runtime. You know, I think that it's almost like a 2.5 hour film as well, and it earns its length. Like I said, the only downside really is that of the human component, because it's just not um, servicing as much as the apes do. The apes, I think, just carry the film once again. Um, and the difference being, though, is that what it has going on, thematically speaking, is way more rich and way more detail oriented and way more fascinating than what Rise is. Rise is more about the performance of Andy Serkis and what Weta Digital is bringing on a visual front, whereas Dawn has more to do with the story and more about your investment to that story and how those visuals and the human components, how they play to the narrative. And even though the humans don't play as much of a part as does the visuals, it's still very, very fascinating and very captivating and very, very rewarding. A very, very solid viewing. So, so I really enjoyed myself with it. And yeah, so those are my thoughts on Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. I really enjoy it. I really, really enjoy Dawn. It's I'm kind of alluding to it in this review, but you'll see my thoughts on War, and you'll see how the the series just gets just better. You know, Rise is a good foundation. Dawn just improves upon it and reinvents it, and then carries that mentality, that craftsmanship to War, and in my view, even elevates it further. But we'll get to that review next week. But those are my thoughts on Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Sorry, my throat got dry and just had a hiccup. Sorry, but you guys know your thoughts on Dawn of the Planet of the Apes if you guys have seen it, and your thoughts on the series, your thoughts on Rise, your thoughts on Dawn. Next week will be War for the Planet of the Apes. Let me know your thoughts on War for the Planet of the Apes if you guys have seen that as well. And I believe there was an early screening for Kingdom this week. So if any of you guys have seen Kingdom, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. And until then, I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye.